Hello and welcome to the regular business meeting for the District of Squamish for Tuesday, October 3rd, 2023. As always, we're gathered to do our work on the traditional and unceded territory of the Squamish Nation. And I just want to take a moment to recognize that over the weekend for National Day of Truth and Reconciliation, there was a great event held not far from here in Junction Park around the led by the Squamish Nation, where they shared where many stories were shared and highlighting the truth portion of this equation. And for some of the folks sharing their stories, it was the first time that they've shared with their community what their experiences are. So as much as our understanding of truth is much advanced from where it was, we have a long way to go, as we've only heard the stories that folks have been willing to tell. And it was a very moving day, and it highlighted how much further we have to go, purely on the truth side. And all those truths were spoken with great honesty and a remarkable amount of humor, and was just such a great a great and important event. And I'm happy that our community came out and was involved, and the nation members also finished with song and dance and invited everyone to join. It was just a great way to recognize we need to move forward together, and a very moving day. And as we all have put away our orange shirts, the truth hasn't gone away, and it's important that we continue to seek truth as we move forward in reconciliation actions, or reconciliation as it is. And I look forward to doing that work. So I just raise my hands to everyone that was involved in putting on the event over the weekend, and everyone that participated either at the event or recognized the day in their own way. So moving on to official business here, please be advised that this council meeting is being live streamed, recorded, and will be available to the public to view on the District of Squamish website following the meeting. If you have concerns, please notify the corporate officer present at the meeting. Could I have someone move adoption of the agenda as amended? Moved by Councillor French, second by Councillor Hamilton. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Just for those of you tuning in, we have Councillor Pettingill is participating remotely today, so he's here, but he's here in the meeting, but isn't physically here. Our first order of business is a proclamation request for Foster Family Month. And we don't have anyone presenting on this. Would anybody like to move the proclamation request? Moved by Councillor French. I'll second it. Would you like to speak to it at all?
Well, just so that everybody knows what we're up to, the motion is that October 2023 be declared as Foster Family Month in the District of Squamish. And I'll add that for many years, one of my across the street neighbors, who has since moved out of the community, had many foster children through their home, and some of them with very challenging health concerns. And out of my experience of being a neighbor to that home, I really got an appreciation for the hard work that foster families put in, and the service that they provide to our community. It's admirable and it's honorable, and I'm happy that we're about to declare October 2023 as Foster Family Month.
Thank you. Any other comments on this? Go ahead, Councillor Stoner.
Yeah, I will just note that I think for me this is a challenging proclamation, especially on the heels of National Day of Truth and Reconciliation. I fully agree that there are many folks within the foster system that mean well, do well, and really show up with their whole hearts. The system as a whole is broken, though. So it's challenging for me to support this at this point. And so I don't think I'll be supporting the motion on the floor, despite the good work that those people do.
Thank you. Councillor Penigal.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate my colleagues' comments. I've had an opportunity to volunteer for a youth development program where some of the participants come from foster care, and you can definitely see there are significant holes in the system and challenges. And I guess my hope in supporting this is to encourage support, not just for the people doing the work now, but for the more investment and support for the system, which is so critical because, you just see some just wonderful kids struggling in ways that kids shouldn't have to struggle in this province. And that's frustrating to see. But, anything we can do to enhance and improve and encourage the system to get better, I think is hopefully worthwhile. So for that reason, I will be supporting this. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Speaking in support of the motion, I think this the system is imperfect, and I think shedding light on it and keeping its profile as high as possible hopes to improve. My aim would be to hope to improve its profile so that it gets the reforms that it needs going forward. But it is extremely challenging topic for sure. So I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Councillor Stoner opposes. Motion carries. Thank you. Moving on, we have no public hearing this evening. We're on to item 5 is a consent agenda. Is there anyone who'd like to pull anything from the consent agenda? Seeing none. Oh, sorry. Sorry, go ahead, Councillor Penigal.
Yep, just 5B2, please, which is the BCEAO letter.
That's B1.
Oh, B1. My apologies.
Okay, that's fine. And with that, we'll deal with that one in due course. Seeing no other hands, I'll move the consent agenda if there's a seconder. Seconded by Councillor Hamilton. All in favor? The motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Well, that's a consent item. So next we're on to consideration of council committee recommendations. And we have recommendations from the committee of the whole from September 12th, 2023 regarding the downtown parking study. That's part of the consent agenda. So yeah, we're on, that tripped me up earlier. I'm on 6. So 6.1 is recommendations to committee of the whole September 12th, which is the downtown parking study. We made some recommendations at that time. Are you moving those? Councillor Stoner's moved, Councillor French is second. Any comments? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. And then we had the second item there is recommendations from the committee of the whole for September 26, 2023, the Community Climate Action Plan Progress Update. And it was received for information, moved by Councillor Stoner, second by Councillor French. Any comments? All in favor? Any opposed? Councillor Penigal, you weren't opposing that one, were you? I don't know if
No,
we have a
just
slight delay. I just want to make sure that I'd rather double check than assume. Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
slight delay.
Yep, that's fine. So next we have first 3 readings, and we do have staff to this. So I'll invite you to the table, and I'll give you a second to get set up, and then you can introduce yourself and the topics, please. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Rianne Sousa, and I'm the Director of Financial Operations at the district. To assist with addressing me, my pronouns are she and her, and I'm here today to present on permissive tax exemptions, also known as PTEs. The goal of the presentation today is to present the permissive tax exemption bylaws for council consideration of first 3 readings. To note, the bylaws are a result of the council discussion and motions passed at the September 26th special business meeting. For council and the community's background, I'll first review the legislation. A council may, by bylaw, exempt land and/or improvements from property taxes, which are referred to as permissive tax exemptions. A permissive tax exemption will exempt all property taxes, municipal and other, and redistribute the taxes to other taxpayers. A permissive tax exemption may be granted for up to a 10-year period, and council must give public notice of the proposed permissive tax exemption bylaws prior to adoption. A permissive tax exemption differs from general statutory tax exemptions granted under Section 220 of the Community Charter, in that the discretion or decision to grant a permissive tax exemption is at council's discretion. After 3 readings of bylaws, the next step is to give public notice of the bylaws. After public notice, the bylaws are scheduled for council consideration of adoption on October 17th. The last step is to send the bylaws to BC Assessment, which must be by October 31st. So I've organized this to go through each bylaw, knowing that there may be a conflict declared on one of them, and put it as the last bylaw. Bylaw number 3013-2023. So Sea to Sky Montessori Society has applied for a permissive tax exemption for the Montessori school. It operates on Loggers Lane. The bylaw for consideration is a 1-year PTE. The estimated value of the 2024 PTE is $4,478. The recommended resolution is that the District of Squamish permissive tax exemptions 1-year Sea to Sky Montessori Society bylaw number 3013-2023 be given first 3 readings. And just ask the chair, did you want me to pause for each one or wait till the end for all?
I think we can do these, perhaps. I'm trying to think if we go through, I think we can do these. We've discussed this once before, so I think we can do these individually as they come. I don't think we need to go through them all and then come back. We can start down that path. Councillor Anderson?
Mayor Hooper, I'd just like to advise that I would be wishing to declare a conflict of interest on item number 7A5, the Squamish Valley Golf and Country Club.
Thank you for that, and we'll proceed until we get to there, and then we'll have you make that declaration and step out while we deal with that one. So I think we're ready to go through these now. So we'd be looking for someone to move the recommendation for first 3 readings of this one, moved by Councillor French and second by Councillor Anderson. Would you like to speak to it?
Yes, please. This society offers much needed daycare and educational services for the community, and providing a permissive tax exemption helps this group keep costs down for parents struggling with childcare. The society meets all the criteria for the exemption, thus I'm putting this forward.
Thank you. Councillor Stoner, then Hamilton.
Yeah, thank you. I won't be supporting the motion on the floor. While it does meet our criteria, it does not meet the community charter requirements for it being an education or learning facility. And while it is a nonprofit, it does share space with the for-profit entity. And so I think it really is murky in terms of breaking out what pieces of that land are actually being used for the for-profit versus the nonprofit. And similar to some of the challenges we have with passing these sorts of things on to businesses, we don't actually know that gets passed on to the end user fee. And so I don't think that this is a good use of our permissive tax exemption policy.
Thank you. Councillor Hamilton.
I agree with my council colleague, Councillor Stoner, that the convolution of a for-profit group and a not-for-profit group using the same property and this 50-50 split between the two is, for me, leading to a troublesome resolution of how to manage this. I absolutely agree with Councillor French that supporting educational institutions and daycare is important, but this is a for-profit. There's a for-profit component that is not clearly delineated from the not-for-profit component. So I will not be supporting this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Pettingill. I see your hand there.
Yeah, and as before, I will also not be supporting this. I think to my colleagues, the movers' point about supporting childcare and so on, the grant is not for the childcare piece. And so if this is then supporting that for-profit childcare, it's doing exactly what the concerns have been raised here. And I think, we need to be very thoughtful if our intent is to generally start funding education as a municipality. That is a provincial responsibility, and we haven't had the discussion. What is proposed here is a policy change, maybe a small one in the context of our overall budget, but I don't think it's a direction that I'm comfortable going at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments on this one? Go ahead, Councillor Greenlaw.
I'll be supporting this motion for the simple fact that families in our community have so little support, and I think this offers support to those families and education.
Thank you. Any other comments? Seeing none, I'm speaking in support of the motion. I recognize the challenges that the sort of the split of the property and the use present. We've been presented with a 50% usage between the two spaces and a short term. So I think for this, I'm supportive of this for now in that 1 year context, and but those pieces need to be more fulsomely addressed if we're going to consider this in the longer term going forward. So I'll be supporting it this time. With that, I'll call the question. All in favor and opposed? So we've got Councillor Hamilton, Stoner, and Pettingill opposed. Motion carries. Thank you. Next up, we have, back to staff.
Mamquam River Access Society has applied for a PTE for the campground it operates on Centennial Way. The recommended PTE is for 4 years. The estimated PTE value for 2024 is $1,381. As well, on this bylaw, Sea to Sky Community Services has applied for a PTE for the Foundry and Youth Center that it operates from Buckley Avenue. The recommended PTE is for 4 years. The estimated PTE value for 2024 is $7,427. And the recommended resolution is that the District of Squamish 2024 Permissive Tax Exemptions 4 years bylaw number 3015/2023 be given first 3 readings.
Thank you. Are you moving, Councillor Hamilton? Is there a seconder? Councillor Stoner seconds. Any comments? Seeing none on this one, I'll call a question. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much.
Squamish Helping Hand Society has applied for two PTEs. The first is for Under One Roof, and the second is for the overdose prevention site. The 2024 PTEs are estimated at $2,232 and $18,904 respectively. The recommended resolution is that the District of Squamish 2024 Permissive Tax Exemptions 1 year Squamish Helping Hand Society bylaw number 3016/2023 be given first 3 readings.
Thank you. Council? Moved by Councillor Stoner, second by Councillor Hamilton. Any comments? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. We're on to item 4. Over to you.
Sea to Sky Community Services Society has applied for PTEs for the non-market housing units it operates at Center Point and Riverstones. The 2024 PTEs are estimated to be $15,990 and $23,703 respectively. The recommended resolution is that the District of Squamish 2024 permissive tax exemptions 1-year Sea to Sky Community Services bylaw number 3017, 2023 be given first 3 readings.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question on this one. We might have covered it last time around and I've forgotten. This is just a 1-year term that's being recommended by staff. What's preventing this from being a longer term, or why is this not 3 or 4 or 5 years?
Through the chair, it's eligible for 10 years. So statutorily, council can grant up to 10 years. At the special business meeting last Tuesday, it was asked that it be brought forward as 1 year.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? But I'd consider a motion. Looks like questions have been addressed. Moved by Councillor Stoner, second by Councillor Hamilton. You speak to it. Go ahead.
Yeah, just to help provide some reminder context to my council colleagues' question, I think I was the one who put forward the recommendation that has come back for 1 year. And that's because I think we're still trying to suss out where the line is in terms of permissive tax exemptions for affordable housing, especially affordable housing that is run under a provincial agreement. And so to me, this really does start to blur the lines around where municipal support is going for affordable housing versus what should be covered by operating costs from the province. And so this is to provide a little bit more breathing room for our affordable housing providers to continue to have that conversation, and our staff where needed to be able to better understand what the long-term implications are for this as a municipality. Because if you draw this out over 5-10 years, the tax implications can get very significant, especially if we're trying to grow as much affordable housing as we are. So I think we just need to, for me, have a bit of a cautious approach here, hence the 1-year term.
Thank you. Any other comments? With that, I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. And now we're on to item 5, which is where Councillor Anderson, go ahead.
Mayor Herford, I'd like to excuse myself from consideration of this item. As a member of the affiliated curling club, my fees can potentially be affected by the fate of the golf club's application. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you. And thank you for structuring your presentation to allow this to happen as smoothly as possible. So back to you.
Squamish Valley Golf Club has applied for a permissive tax exemption for the lands and buildings it provides where it provides golf, curling, and squash from. The bylaw for consideration is a 1-year PTE. The estimated value of the 2024 PTE is $31,171. The recommended resolution is that the District of Squamish 2024 permissive tax exemptions 1-year Squamish Valley Golf and Country Club bylaw number 3014, 2023 be given first 3 readings.
Thank you. Are you moving that, Councillor French? Thank you. Is there a seconder? I'll second it. Would you like to speak to it? No. Okay. Go ahead, Councillor Hamilton.
As discussed at the previous special business meeting, I will be speaking against this motion. I understand that this is a bit of a tradition that first-year councillors get to scratch their head on this one, but I don't see the logic in providing a permissive tax exemption to support golf and country club when we're considering all the other applications of our tax exemptions in our community. Thanks.
Thank you for that. Councillor Stoner.
I don't think it's just a first-term counselor who gets to have the ability to scratch their heads over this one, because here I am 5 years in and I am still a little bit dumbfounded by it. But as per our previous discussion, I think that there was some additional information that came to light about whether, like, how much of a requirement this is actually based on the lease. And so I just want to confirm with staff, realize that there's a motion on the floor, but I'll just put it in as a comment that this initiates a conversation with the Squamish Valley Golf and Country Club around this permissive tax exemption and the expectations there, because I think that there's maybe some changing information, and I think that this to me is not a given every year, where I think previously it was. So I'm not willing to just pull it out from under them this year, but I am hoping that staff can initiate that conversation for next year. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Pettingill and then Councillor French.
Yeah, thanks. And I just to dig into the last conversation a little bit and why I'm supporting this, it was news to me that this was discretionary. My understanding was that this was an obligation as part of our lease, and what came to light is that may not be so. And I think I am concerned this is a bit late in the day to change this without a discussion. And the other piece to this is I want a bit of an understanding, because I know people use that area for more than just golf and squash and so on. There's trails and other things. So I want a little bit more understanding of the uses and so on there, and to look at that in the context of our PTE policy for next year, with the understanding that this is certainly not a given for next year. And I think Councillor Hamilton raises some points that resonate with me strongly, but I just don't want to spring this so late, this change, and I want a little bit more information before making the change. But I hope this will spur a conversation well ahead of next year. So I will not, sorry, I will support this time around. I'm not so sure about next time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor French.
Yeah, just speaking in favor of the motion, I'll share that I do align with the thoughts of my council colleagues. And this is consistent with things I've said previously. I'm hoping that our golf club friends are watching this and are on notice that we will revisit this next year. And this permissive tax exemption might not be granted next year, or might be granted in a much different way.
Thank you. I'm speaking in favor of the motion. And similarly to some other comments, I think that the 1 year term is appropriate, and I hope to have a conversation and to better understand the value. And perhaps this is an education piece for myself or for council in general, as to how this relates to the obligations set out in the lease, as well as the general expectations of the group, and on balance the value that it provides. So I feel there's a path through there, but I think this is and I look forward to those discussions. But I'm supportive at this time, and look forward to having those discussions before we get back to this point in the game next year. Seeing no other hands, I'll call the question. All in favor? And opposed? Councillor Stoner and Hamilton oppose. Okay. Councillor Hamilton opposes. Councillor Hamilton opposes. Okay. It's been a long day. That's fine. Thank you. So then, just a second. Yep. If you can get Councillor Anderson back, it'd be great. Thank you. Welcome back, Councillor Anderson. So now we're on to adoption, and we don't generally get, if tradition holds, we're not having any presentations for any of these adoption pieces. So we do have quite a few to go through. So item 1 is the District of Squamish Housing Agreement Bylaw for Garibaldi Springs Phase 1 non-market rental, which is number 3009, 2023. Moved by Councillor Stoner, second by Councillor French. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Number 2 is the District of Squamish Housing Agreement Bylaw, Garibaldi Springs Phase 2 non-market rental, number 3010, 2023. Moved by Councillor Hamilton, second by Councillor Stoner. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. We're moving on to item 3 has been removed. Item 4, District of Squamish zoning bylaw number 2200, 2011 amendment bylaw around the Brackendale Art Gallery, which is number 2977, 2023. Moved by Councillor Stoner, seconded by Councillor Anderson, just to balance that. Any comments? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Next up, we have District of Squamish zoning bylaw number 2200, 2011 amendment bylaw, and this is around Unit B for 1005 Industrial Way, and this is number 2978, 2023. Moved by Councillor Hamilton, Councillor Stoner. Any comments? Call the question. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. There are quite a few of these. As we're on to item 6, District of Squamish zoning bylaw 2200, 2011 amendment bylaw. These relate to 41668 and 41678 Finn Road, and this is number 2979, 2023. Moving by Councillor French, second by Councillor Hamilton. All in favor? Motion carries. We've got a lot of adoptions today, so if you want to speak to any of these, wave your hands vigorously, or I'm just going to try to keep us moving. District of Squamish zoning bylaw 2200, 2011 amendment bylaw, which pertains to 39773 and 39775 Government Road. This is number 2980. I have someone move adoption. Moved by Councillor Stoner, second by Councillor French. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Next, we're on to District of Squamish zoning bylaw number 2200, 2011 amendment bylaw. This pertains to 3018 The Crescent and is number 2981, 2023. And I will move that one if there's a seconder. Second by Councillor Hamilton. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Now we're on to District of Squamish zoning bylaw number 2200, 2011 amendment bylaw. This pertains to 1901 Maple Drive and 40782 Perth Drive and is number 2983, 2023. So move adoption by Councillor Anderson, second by Councillor Stoner. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. We're on to item 10. District of Squamish zoning bylaw number 2200, 2011 amendment bylaw. This pertains to 1701 Centennial Way and is number 2999, 2023. Moved by Councillor Hamilton, second by Councillor French. All in favor? Any opposed? Looked a little late on that one, Councillor Pettingill. Were you opposed? No? You're good? Okay. District of Squamish zoning bylaw number 2200, 2011 amendment bylaw. This is for 38171 to 38185 Westway Avenue and is number 3001, 2023. Moved by Councillor Hamilton, second by Councillor Greenlaw. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. We're now on to item 12.
I would like to declare a conflict. Thank you. I'll declare a conflict as an employee of Capilano University, of which may be affected by this zoning amendment.
Yep. Thank you very much for that. We will come and get you when we're finished with that topic. Okay. On item 12. Looking for, this is the District of Squamish zoning bylaw number 2200, 2011 amendment bylaw. This is the UC1 amendments and is number 3002, 2023. Moved by Councillor Stoner, second by Councillor French. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Hopefully he didn't go too far. Welcome back. Now we're on to, we have nothing under staff reports, nothing under late agenda items. Now we're on to correspondence action requested. So, which is item 10, which is 10-1, which is the letter from Mr. Carey, re Parks and Trails. So I'm just going to pull it up. We don't have a presentation on this one, but council, we have the letter. Sorry, I'm just trying to put it in front of me. I lost my spot. That's okay. I got it here. 130, page 132 in your agenda package, 132 of 139. So the request, for those at home that haven't read this, a group of neighbors got together and repaired a bridge. And just in the letter, I just want to clear something up here. The first paragraph of the letter says, I'm writing to inform you with the help of local volunteers, we have completed the necessary safety issues on the Hereford footbridge over Judd Sloop. And I've never heard of this particular bridge being referred to as a Hereford Bridge. It has no, it's about 4 houses away from my parents' house, which is maybe where this came from. And historically, a long time ago, there was another bridge in the area that may or may not have been installed and maintained by my family. But this particular bridge, I have no claim to. So I just wanted to address that as it's here. But I am familiar with the area. So, so a group of neighbors got together and performed some repair work and are looking to be reimbursed for some of the materials for doing that work. That's the short version of this. There's some photos attached in the agenda package for those that are interested in that. Councillor French.
Mayor, I believe that this is just the kind of thing council contingency might have been designed to cover. So I'd like to hear from staff if they have any thoughts on the idea of covering Mr. Carey's expenses and his request with funds coming out of council contingency.
I'm gonna take a quick stab at it, which is that council contingency is at council's discretion, which we have quite broad discretion in that way. But maybe the question is, could you remind us what the current status of our council contingency is, given that there's been some commitments made that haven't been billed through there yet? So could we have an idea of what's left there?
Thank you for the question through the chair. You're absolutely right. Council contingency is of the discretion of council, provided that it is not assistance business. I will have to confirm on the exact balance. I have a good idea, but I don't want to confirm until I've had a look.
Okay. I guess the follow-up is that how far, I see Councillor Pettingill, just how much time would you need? Is that something you'd be able to do inside this meeting, or is this we refer it to a different meeting so we have that answer? I just want to understand what we need to do.
It's very possible that I can find out in the next 5 minutes. However, if not, we'll have to refer to another meeting.
Okay. Well, we'll go through. Let's go through this. We'll go through to Councillor Pettingill, and then I'll come back to you, Councillor French. Okay. Follow up. Go ahead.
So that leads me to the question of, if we don't have enough in the council contingency, is there another budget we could pull from to cover this?
Okay, I was going to, let's go through the questions and we'll take a break if we don't have the answer, because we can also move on to the next agenda item and come back to this one if we need time. So just try to keep moving here, if that's okay with staff. Okay. I've got Councillor Pettingill and then Stoner.
Yeah, thanks. And in terms of funds that are exactly for this, is my understanding is that our annual trails funding is meant to do this, and that the trails groups led by Sorka look at the sort of needs and prioritize and allocate that funding accordingly. So I'm wondering why that process wasn't followed here, or was it denied through that avenue? And I guess I'm not sure. Maybe a question for my colleagues: what's the impact if we are we setting up a second? Are we sort of saying to the community, if we fund this out of something other than the Trails Fund, is like, hey, just go and do whatever and submit a bill, and we'll probably fund it, because I'm not sure I'm quite comfortable with that. I guess I have some hesitation. My preference, I think, unless I'm misunderstanding, was that this flow through the Trails funding, which is sort of planned and prioritized and well funded each year.
Okay, I don't think that there's that we have. I'm going to take that more as a statement than a question here, because maybe be a question to the letter writer as to whether they pursued other avenues or not. I don't know what anyone's here is supposed to speak to that, but I understand your point is taken. Councillor Stoner.
Yeah, mine are also comments before we send staff off to do too much work. I am challenged by this request, just in terms of process and the reality of potentially sanctioning the building of illegal trails in potentially environmentally sensitive areas. And so I think that it's a challenging one to support, and I don't think I would support it coming from council contingency. And if these folks want to continue to build trails, and there's ways to do that, and there's different organizations that are doing it in a way that is structured and does receive funding through the district, and I think those are processes that are available.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments on this one? Notwithstanding those comments, we do have an outstanding issue around what is available in council contingency, which would be the place for these if we were to fund it. So I think maybe do we have that? No. Okay. Maybe we'll move on to the next. We can suspend the order and we'll go to the next item, and then we can circle back. We'll circle back to this topic.
Can I test a motion, and if it fails,
you can. Yeah, go ahead.
I'll move receipt.
Are you seconding receipt? Okay. Do I speak to it?
All my previous comments hold, and I just don't think that we need to send staff off necessarily to do additional work to figure out how much is left in council contingency if there isn't support around the council table to fund this.
Thank you. Councillor Hamilton.
Yeah, I was also I'm challenged by this one. It's the sort of community work that is fantastic to see the community just improving the trails, improving their environment around them, and there's no way that the district could have done this for the cost of the lumber. The challenge to me is a retroactive request, and the precedent this could set for replacing a bridge and then asking for the money back. It's not the effort or the work here. I'm thankful to the community for doing this, but I see the precedent as a dangerous precedent to set.
Thank you. Councillor French.
Thanks, Mayor. I'm going to support the motion, and in supporting the motion, I definitely want to speak to it because I do appreciate that Mr. Carey and the folks that he worked with put time and effort into repairing an existing bridge. And I do hope that somewhere along the line, he might be able to recover his $400+ from somewhere. I was the testamental administrator for many years, and the race organizers followed rigid rules, regulations, and policies. And what we're talking about here is exactly what I was in charge of for many years. So I do support proper trail building permissions and making sure that we're not developing in riparian areas where we shouldn't be putting this type of infrastructure. So I wish Mr. Carey all the best of luck in recovering his $400. And I wish it could be from us, but I can't support that.
Thank you. Other comments? Councillor Greenlaw?
Yeah, I also have difficulty supporting this. I really appreciate the spirit and the effort that went into this, but I think it is potentially setting a difficult precedent for trail building. And as someone who uses the Smoke Bluffs trails a lot, I have a lot of concerns about illegal and or environmentally insensitive trail building, if you will. And as Councillor Stoner pointed out, we do have mechanisms for people to get funding for this kind of work, but doing it retroactively, I feel does set a difficult precedent. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Pettingill, did I see your hand earlier?
No, I think what I would say has been covered by myself already and my colleagues.
Thank you. I won't be supporting the motion. I was hoping we were going to get to the discussion around what we had remaining in that fund so we could consider how we'd want to allocate what percentage of the fund left. I think that I agree that in the majority of cases, we want to see, our groups that we've support doing this work, doing the work. But this is an example of a neighborhood coming together and taking some action on a complicated piece where this is a piece of district supported infrastructure that went in and is not being maintained. This is eventually going to be either a risk for us as a municipality, where we'd have to make the decision on whether to spend tens of thousands of dollars on it or remove it to avoid the risk, and then remove the access to a piece of the community that I know sees a lot of traffic. So I think it's, as much as I have voted against things on sort of from a process perspective in the past, but I think this is one of those exceptional cases where it falls directly into what the kind of thing we should be looking at with council contingency, and which does have limits, and that's up to us to set those limits. Yeah, so I won't be supporting the motion. I would have liked to have seen the discussion around the dollars. But with that, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Mayor Herford opposes. Motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to item 10.2. The BC Geographical Names Office request for comment on the name change proposal for Nchikai. And so I'm just going to pull it up so I know Yes, go ahead, Councillor Anderson. You want to get us started on this one?
Yes, Mayor Herford, I would like to propose a motion that a letter supporting the name change request be submitted from our council to the BC Geographic Names Office with 2 suggested referrals that are not mentioned in the distribution list, namely Heritage BC and the National Congress of Italian Canadians British Columbia Region Society. That was the National Congress of Italian Canadians British Columbia Region Society. So my motion is that council write a letter in support of the name change, offering 2 additional referrals, Heritage BC and the Italian Canadians Society I mentioned. If there's a seconder, I'll speak to it.
Are you going to second that, Councillor French? Okay. Yep. Go ahead, Councillor Anderson.
This request has generated and will generate substantial discussion, and I believe that some context around the original naming is appropriate. Earlier today in another meeting, we discussed statements of significance for heritage, and I believe place names of this nature deserve that kind of attention and professional attention. So I'm concerned about that this be done right with the proper referrals, and that the context in the information that the BC Geographical Names will manage and distribute be accurate. British Royal Navy Captain Richards, whose crews surveyed Howe Sound in 1860 and much of the BC coast during this period, had a policy of adopting traditional Indigenous place names in his mapping work when he had access to them. There are many examples of this naming practice on the part of Captain Richards up and down the coast, from Clayoquot to Quatsino. Locally, Captain Richards and his crew are responsible for the preservation and very accurate rendering of Squamish place names, traditional place names for official maps use from the 1860s through the 1950s, and a list I'll offer here. The names that Captain Richards preserved, recorded, and placed on maps for us to this day include Statmas, Mamquam River, Squamish River, Ilaho, Chakamas, Yaquapsum, Kauteen, Siachim, and more. This captain is responsible for the map we use today, and those place names could easily have been referred to any number of people with anyone else coming along to give those names. We owe a lot to them. They were the first to record those traditional names and in the languages as best they could. So there is, he presumably did not have an informant for Nchikai. Meanwhile, Giuseppe Garibaldi was widely admired in his day by liberal-minded, progressive-thinking people on all continents. He was a freedom fighter of world renown, an enormous celebrity in the period, and also a champion of the rights of oppressed Indigenous peoples, including in the Americas, where he spent a good deal of time over a few periods of his life. As reference is made to Garibaldi not ever visiting the BC coast, which is correct, this is irrelevant. A large majority of place names around Howe Sound are associated with persons who never visited North America, or vessels such as the HMS Britannia, which never entered the Pacific. I've made a count of 42 names of mountains and rivers and bodies of water around Howe Sound named after persons who never set foot on North America. So there's a long list. So I do suggest that Heritage BC, as a representative organization for heritage professionals and heritage organizations who are not represented on the distribution list, that would be appropriate. A large amount of work has been done by scholars on Captain Richards and on the surveying that was done and on his relationship with Indigenous peoples. And with respect to the Italian Canadians, here locally, I feel it's almost our responsibility. We have a large monument with monies raised by local Italian families that is on the highway commemorating Garibaldi. We have materials that have been donated to the Squamish Public Library. And outside in the foyer, we have a cabinet commemorating the trip of one of our previous mayors to Italy, paid for by the Italian Canadian community. Next week is a conference being organized by the Italian Canadian community of BC on Indigenous Italian Canadian connections. And I'm done.
I think we've blown past the 5-minute mark there, but thank you very much for your comments. We'll give council opportunity to chime in here as well. Councillor French, I saw your hand.
Yeah, speaking in support of the motion, Mayor, I'm impressed that Councillor Anderson, A, was able to take that out over 5 minutes, and B, is even aware of the Italian Canadian Society of BC. And I think it's great that we're encouraging that referral, because their feedback would be of value. And I see this as a reconciliation measure to contemplate and I hope eventually rename the peak from Garibaldi to Nchikai.
Thank you. Councillor Pettingill.
Yeah, we'll hear the rest of the conversation, but at this point, I'm inclined to support the resolution. I would like to, I don't know if we'll need to amend or not. Reply is also CC to Squamish Nation. I think I would also hope that our letter can be articulated in such a way as to express our preference for the return of the name Nchikai. There has been, I have received one piece of correspondence asking for a dual name, and I want to be cautious about water
Councillor Pettingill, you're cutting up.
and to
Your
confuse.
sorry, your
Oh.
signal's cutting up. Do you mind just maybe killing your video while you make your comments? It's just been really choppy.
Yeah. Sorry
Try
about
again.
that.
That's okay. Try again.
Yeah, so inclined to support the resolution, would like to see this go to Squamish Nation as well, but also hope that our response, we can be very clear about our preference for the return of the name Nchikai. Have received one piece of correspondence asking for a dual name. I think in the history, while there have been some settlers who may have made some good efforts, there's been a lot of attempts by settlers to erase Indigenous history, and I think from my perspective, doing anything other than being very clear that we wish to see true reconciliation and I think a return to the original Indigenous names is really important. So I think expressing that clearly in our intent and our response is important. I don't have an issue with making sure that everyone is aware of our perspective and what we're trying to do here, but I think our intent should be crystal clear as well.
Thank you. Councillor Stoner?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if I can seek clarification from the mover about what is the intent behind referral, Councillor Anderson, to these two additional bodies?
Mayor Herford, yes, if I may respond. First of all, I think that the protocol for the BC Geographical Names Office should clearly include a provincial heritage organization, and there is no listing of a heritage organization in the distribution list. I have had some exchange with Heritage BC, and they concur and are concerned about this missing referral. The Italian Canadian community have long been involved in celebrating the commemoration of a national hero, and they also, I feel, are deserving of inclusion in the distribution lists for BC geographical names. And this would be simply to have a complete statement, a complete context statement that would be made available to people in future in looking up this name in their database.
I can see you pondering that. I will say that the distribution list here included goes right from the Alpine Club of Canada to SORCA to Outdoor Recreation Council of British Columbia. So I think the suggestion of including making these two additions to that list is reasonable in that context. On first pass, I had a bit of a challenge with it, but looking at the rest of this list, I think it's fairly innocuous at this point. So I'll be supporting the motion and supporting the intent of this, which is the renaming to Nchikai, which I don't think we should really even frame as a renaming, just the formalizing the use more broadly of the name Nchikai, as I know in conversations here we've been referring to it that way for some time. Sorry, Councillor Greenlaw, if I missed you, but go ahead.
Oh yeah, I just wanted to also speak in support of this motion. I was actually hoping that Garibaldi would be returned to Nchikai during my term, so I'm happy to not have to do any legwork around this. And as much as I enjoyed hearing the history of Garibaldi, I have an even greater appreciation for the representation that this gives the Squamish language, people, and culture. And I hope that this change eventually goes on to be reflected by BC Parks.
Thank you. So with that, I'll call the. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I'm still a little bit challenged by this. Just with adding the additional referrals, the reality that these processes already take a lot of time. And this is, to me, really just trying to reinstate the rightful name based on the longstanding Indigenous traditional territory and naming of this area. And so while I fully support the renaming of Garibaldi to Nchikai, we rename things often. There's actually Kel Salem has who is the chair of Squamish Nation has an email list that he puts out, and one of the things that he mentioned in his most recent posting was how often we do actually rename things, and how adding additional layers to complexity makes this even more difficult to reclaim some of the names and the lands that they once used and would like to use again. And so I will support the motion on the floor because I think the intent is right in terms of providing support to renaming Mount Garibaldi to Enchikai. But to me, actually, that list is often too long. And so I'm challenged with the motion on the floor.
Councillor Pettingill?
Yeah, if I can clarify with the mover, because again, the distribution list as it stands is just letting us be aware of who they've sent it to. So is the proposal of the resolution that we support the renaming, but we also ask the Geographic Society to ask these other bodies to weigh in, or just that we send a CC of our support to these extra two bodies?
Go ahead, Councillor Anderson.
Mayor Herford, to quote from the letter, please redirect this request to the appropriate contact in your organization as needed, or let me know if it should be sent elsewhere, which I understand to be an invitation to suggest further contact bodies for persons or organizations for the request.
Maybe we'll just have the motion be read out so everyone can understand it, because that's what I'll be acting upon if this is whichever way this goes. So can I go to our minute taker, please?
So the motion that I have is that a letter supporting the name change request be submitted by council to the BC Geographical Names Office with 2 referrals to Heritage BC and National Congress of Italian Canadians.
Councillor Anderson.
Just to put it, National Congress of Italian Canadians, British Columbia Region Society. That is, in fact, their registered name. Thank you.
So the question to the mover, I suppose, is those, would that be a suggestion to this body to make that reference, or am I to CC them on my reply? I'm unclear just exactly what happens with that information. Is it a suggestion of to add to the distribution list?
Yes, it is would be a suggestion, is my intent, a suggestion directly to the BC Geographical Names Office, that a direct suggestion, recommendation.
Okay, thank you for that clarity. Councillor Pettingill.
Yeah, with the discussion we've had, were this motion to pass as proposed, Mayor, would you have the understanding that as part of articulating this, you would include the fact that adding these other recipients would not diminish or water down our sort of desire for the return of the original name?
Yeah, thank you. I think and from what I'm extracting from the conversation here and what I feel is captured in this motion is that there's support for the name change and just some suggestions for the distribution list, and that's really a footnote. I appreciate. I think it was you, Councillor, that suggested the Squamish Nation. I noticed they're absent there, but it just makes me think that, and it's dangerous to assume these things, that they've been integral to this process up to this point. That's the request. So yeah, it came from them. So I don't know that that's, that piece is necessary, but I think I just finished with a suggestion of addition to the distribution list. That's all. And the bulk of it is the acceptance of this body that this is an appropriate direction. unless someone wants to try to amend it to remove the pieces that are giving us pause. I think we've heard comments. I'm ready to call the question, and I'll do that, seeing no hands. So all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, now we're on to correspondence referred from the consent agenda, and Councillor Pettingill pulled item B1, which is the an EAO office letter.
Yeah, thanks. Just wanted to speak to this, and then I'll move receipt. I was a little bit disappointed with the BC EAO response to some of our concerns. I think I just wanted to touch on this a little bit. I guess my hope, I know we all know there's some significant challenges in the BC EAO process, and we had two successful, and thank you, Mayor, for leading the charge on these two resolutions put forward through UBCM to have the BC EAO more formally consider impacts for large infrastructure projects on both housing and social impacts. So we know there are existing challenges, but the BC EAO does have tools in terms of whether or not it approves these things, what sorts of new conditions it adds, what sorts of plans it expects with things like these temporary use, expansions and work camps and different project elements. I guess I'm left with the feeling or the concern that the BC EAO is really just leaving it up to us to address many legitimate community concerns that they do have better tools than us to deal with, even if they're not perfect. They have better tools than us, and they have, from my perspective, declined to do so. So that leaves it for us to address through our TUP process or lack thereof. And it doesn't give me a great deal of confidence that if we proceeded with a TUP that the BC EAO would have our back on enforcing what conditions and plans and so on they're already requiring. So this doesn't give me a great deal of confidence and certainty heading into the consideration of the TUP. So we'll see what that information is when we get it. But I was hoping to see a little more from the BC EAO in terms of holding these projects to address some of their concerns with the tools it has. So with that, I will move receipt.
Thank you. Councillor French, seconding that? And I'm assuming that was your comment for that, Councillor Pettingill?
Yeah, I wasn't sure which way to do that.
No, that's fine. That's fine. It all gets to the same place, I think. Anyone else want to speak to this? I'll just say the response was disheartening, and we're left. We're left, I guess, where we started this process, which is collecting the pieces that fall through the processes of the other orders of government that, frankly, shouldn't be dropping as many pieces on us. Yet here we are. So, frustrating times, but thank you for pulling this and giving us a chance to lament the situation we're in, Councillor Pettingill. With that, I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, moving on. We had no approval, no minutes referred. Any business arising from minutes? Seeing none. No committee minutes report. Any notice of motion, council? Seeing none. We have no councillor staff in camera announcements. No unscheduled public attendance. Open question period. Does anyone in the audience today would like any clarification related to any agenda items? You seek, yeah, okay, yeah. That's declined by the crowd. And council or staff announcements. Councillor French, would you like to get us started?
Yes, please. And I have a little bit of a graphic support that will show up on the big screen. Last week, Pearl Space made its debut. And this new society, or I should put society in air quotes, is the rebranded House Sound Women's Center Society. I was at the rebranding announcement, which was attended by board members, folks connected to the organization one way or another, and employees of the society. The announcement marks an exciting new chapter for this long-serving institution in Squamish, and you can learn more about the transformation by visiting the new website, which we see here, pearlspace.ca. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I always like the visual aids. Any other who wants to go next? Councillor Stoner.
Yeah, thank you through the chair. Very exciting to see the new rebrand of Pearl Space and exciting to see their work continue in a new iteration after I think they've been here for 40 years. And so they're carrying on in the next 40. Just wanted to give an update, and I'm probably going to miss a few things. Director Herford, Director Pettingill, and myself were at the SLRD board meetings last week. And a few highlights there. We can't speak in detail about it, but there's ongoing movement on the Britannia Beach South rezoning application that is sitting at third reading. That was referred back to staff for some further work before third reading was given. So that's sitting post public hearing before third reading. But again, another big project that's sitting on our doorstep that has just over 1,000 units, the surf park, commercial space. So if folks have been following that, that's probably of interest to this community. The other component, and that's the main one from the board meeting that I wanted to reflect on. There was also a Sea to Sky Regional Hospital District meeting, and this was an annual meeting that we have with representatives from VCH that come and make their annual budgetary requests for their capital investments. It's always a bit of a challenging discussion, but the good news is that included in their next year of funding is a CT scanner for the Squamish Regional, or for the Squamish Hospital, which has been a long piece of advocacy from our doctors in our community, with some support from council and more broadly throughout the corridor. So it was really great to see that VCH was responding to that request, and they are moving forward with adding a CT scanner at the Squamish General Hospital, which will serve our community extremely well. And I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Thank you for that. Any other updates? Oh, go ahead, Councillor Pettingill.
Yeah, a couple things. I don't think we've had a chance to speak since we got back from UBCM. I assume we'll have a few opportunities. It was a fantastic week, a little bit overwhelming, it felt, but I think we had some good conversations with ministers and others. It was productive. I'm still trying to wrap my head around some of the galas and how that gets sponsored. Feeling a fair bit of discomfort about how that whole thing goes. And so hopefully that's something we can continue working on. One thing I want to call out is a bit disappointing not to be with the community. There was, I think it was on the Wednesday, I can't remember what they called it, but essentially it was an I'm not really sure, but folks, from my perspective, looking to exclude parts of our community. It was really disturbing. But there's a number of elected representatives from our community and the broader community out to protest the protesters. And so I think very strong support for the LGBTQ2S plus members of our community. Again, would have preferred to have been here supporting that. But it was good to be part of a much larger group in Vancouver that is supporting inclusion of everyone. And so that was good to see. I want to highlight that on October 11th, and I'm cautious about how I do this because he's running for the BC Greens nomination, but Jeremy Valeret, who used to work with us, is doing an event and is showing Where Do We Stand, which is a movie shot by Niall Hart, a former Quest student. It is a free event, regardless of your political affiliation. I will be trying to do some sound, and last time I tried to run a video at Eagle Eye, it didn't work so well. It didn't work at all, in fact. So I'm hoping for better luck this time, and that if people want to come out and see that movie. It will hopefully be informative. There's a few current and former members of council that are featured, members of Squamish Nation, and so on. So could be worthwhile. So that's next October 11th, next Wednesday at Eagle Eye Theatre. It's free. And then the last thing I want to mention is that we lost someone in our community who worked with us, many of us last term on our AV. A very interesting character. Got to ride home with them after council meetings frequently and have some really interesting discussions. So Kelsey Webb apparently passed away recently, and he will be missed in our community, and sad to see him go. Thank you.
Thank you for the update. Any other updates before I venture my own? I think I spoke earlier about the importance and the impact of National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. So, but I'll mention it here again. Just being with our friends at the Squamish Nation as they go about their own truth finding, not just sharing externally, but I know that there was things that were said and shared with the community broadly that they hadn't heard themselves on Saturday. It was quite powerful. I saw many members of council there, at least 2 former mayors as well. So it was great to see the community out and participating, and for the nation to be so open and kind and generous as they're doing so. It was quite impactful. I will reflect back on UBCM, which for those that haven't been, it's a very busy time, and a lot of great sessions where we actually had our staff presenting on a panel, and it often highlights the amount of work that we still have yet to do. But it was nice, particularly in that case, to have Dave Ralston from our engineering department speaking about our diking and the master planning process associated with that, and I had other elected officials coming up for the remainder of the week telling me that you're from Squamish. Oh, that presentation, that David, he's really on it. So it was really nice to see that as we spend most of our time wrestling with the big things that are yet to that we're yet to get on top of. But I think we should know as a community that we are provincial leaning in many areas, including that one. And speaking of, as in that category of leading as well, I'd like to congratulate Councillor Stoner on her election to third vice president of UBCM. So yeah, congratulations on that. It was a I'd say hotly contested election process. So I know how much you enjoy campaigning, Councillor. So, but congratulations. I think it's admirable to step up and take on that role for all of local government in the province. We had 3 resolutions that came through this council and made it through the LMLGA process to get to UBCM, and all 3 of those carried. So I'm really proud of all of our work to get them that far, and now they're will become recommendations from UBCM to the province. You know, I wish it was the path to change was more straightforward, more linear, but we're going to I'll take those as wins, and thank you for everyone's work on those. Yeah, and a lot of meetings with a lot of ministers advocating for a lot of things. And I think we've made some good progress there. And we started off by getting every meeting that we asked for. So, and I think we did a good job of moving forward with moving all those pieces forward. But again, advocacy takes time, but I think it was a big piece there. And then that week was followed up with an SLRD week, which is a Wednesday and Thursdays of meetings following our Tuesday meeting here. And Councillor Stoner touched on some highlights there. I also thought a highlight was as well as the ones previously mentioned, is a proposal for, we've been asking for new campground facilities in Sea to Sky for years and trying to get support of the province to help that happen. And we had a new proposal come forward from a private entity for a new campground facility, which I think is quite exciting. And at Porto Cove in the gravel pit there. So if anyone wants to go back into the SLRD meeting minutes, there's details there, but there's sort of work underway to add some camp facilities to Sea to Sky in a fairly substantial way for the first time in my memory, really, in modern times. Yeah. So yeah, lots of moving pieces, and yeah, I think I could probably go on about the UBCM, but I think I've used up my time. So, Councillor Pettingill, go ahead.
Yeah, I just, if folks will indulge.
I think you muted yourself when you turned your camera off, which
yes,
for us that want to go home, but no, go ahead. Go ahead.
Sorry. I just want to circle back on Kelsey. I cut myself a bit short. I was getting a bit choked up there. But, one thing that I've often thought about with the conversations I had with Kelsey, and just on my mind a lot with our budgeting process today, is, we've seen a lot of success in our community, a lot of growth and some gentrification. And I've always struggling with how we sort of make sure everyone comes along with the success we are seeing. And it's where I struggle with in our budget. We had some conversation about this being a very progressive budget, and to my mind, what that means is we are, as we gentrify and make the community better, we're making sure that we're providing services for everyone to prosper. And where there are gaps from upper levels of government, which we've talked about sort of ad nauseum, we are doing our best to fill those gaps. And that sometimes means we have to reach a bit deeper into our own pockets to make that happen. But it's so important. Kelsey was an artist and someone who had a bit of a challenging life and some challenging times, but there was some brilliance in there too. And definitely not always easy to have a conversation with. And I guess I'm trying to think about how, as we go forward in our budgeting and so on, and some of the things we're choosing to fund, how we can make sure that people that struggle sometimes, how there's a really good sort of constructive place for them to prosper and flourish. And it's not an easy challenge, but I think it's really important to keep that top of mind as we go through our budget. And so that's one of the things I'm sort of thankful to Kelsey for, is reminding me of that. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll just add, the chief did a really nice piece on Kelsey's passing, and for those interested, they republished an interview with Kelsey from 2016 that I think is is well worth a read. So unfortunately, seems to be commonplace where we learn more about people once they've passed on than we find out in our day to day. And there's probably a lesson lurking in there somewhere. But if you'd like to learn some more about Kelsey and have some insights into what he was all about, there's a great article by the chief, and I'm very thankful for them for taking the time to shed some light on Kelsey and his passing. Any other updates? Okay, so now I'll be looking for motion to terminate, which goes to Councillor Stoner, although I think it technically was a false start, and then seconded by Councillor Hamilton. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you so much for your work, everybody, and thanks to everyone that tuned in.